puts us off by hi, Mohammed, can you hear me? All right, not sure if I've got Mohammed. We're going to just have our controller check on that. Let me just give you the situation.
Friday fears. Listen up.
Thank you, Ali.
Okay, very good. We're looking at a Dow that is not at session lows, but we're off 4% right now, which puts us off by about 32, almost 33% over the last month, which is how long we've been dealing with this. And the Dow is now dropping. We are now at session lows, 4.25%. Mohammed, talk to me about this, because you had suggested it when the market was off about 20% that we had at least 10% more to go. In your view, are we getting toward the bottom of this thing, or has this become much more serious than you predicted?
So the underlying dynamics is what you and I have been talking about, which is economic sudden stops that destroy supply and demand. We reach critical mass over the weekend, and the result of which is virtually the whole global economy is shutting down. That reality is now being internalized by markets. It's taking time for markets to realize what the implications are, Ali, and for understandable reason. This is unprecedented, and people are not familiar at all with what that means. I worry that we still have some downside from here. If you are a professional investor, there are some very selective opportunities, but if you are a general investor who buys the indices, be careful and have one principle in mind. Make sure that your mistakes are recoverable. Most investment mistakes are recoverable, some are not.
Mohammed, it was something you wrote that I thought stood out to me. You were talking about the need for collective action. I started this show talking to Gadi Schwartz about the social compact that we all have. And you said for households, this involves resisting the urge for excessive self-insurance, including running to the store, emptying one shelf after another. For companies, it's about fighting the natural reaction, lay off people to protect their short-term bottom line. And for investors, it's about resisting the inclination to liquidate even fundamentally strong holdings in an all-out flight to cash. Very reasonable statements in a time that is challenging our ability to be reasonable, because panic is setting into even those of us who normally are governed by reason.
So I understand why people feel incredibly unsettled. We haven't seen this before. It's moving very, very fast, and government action hasn't done much to stop it. So I understand. I'm sympathetic. I tell you, at home, we have basically daily briefing sessions on what's going on what's ahead, what to expect, and that allows us to have a context. And the government and the Federal Reserve should be doing more of that. So I understand that, but we must also realize that we're all in this together. It's not about the destination, Ali. We're going to get through this. And our economy and our society, they're fundamentally sound. It's about a bumpy journey. And what we should avoid is action that makes a bumpy journey worse. So, for example, if you're a company right now, fundamentally sound, you're going to go through liquidity problems. Why? Because all the markets are going to be shut to you. Your sales are going to come down. Your inclination is to protect your short-term profits. So you lay off people, but by laying off people, you make the problem worse for everybody else. This is a liquidity problem. It should not become an economic solvency problem.
Mohammed El-Erian, thank you for your thoughtful analysis on this on a regular basis. We need some calming voices, because when you look at those markets and you look at things like this, it doesn't give you a lot of solace. Mohammed El-Erian is the Chief Economic Advisor at Allianz. Up next, the silver lining, the positivity that is springing up from these uncertain, unsettling times. You're watching MSNBC.
Call it.
Some of the ways you've been practicing social distancing and finding the silver lining in this coronavirus pandemic. Broadway legend Andrew Lloyd Webber is starting a Composer in Isolation series and took to his Twitter account to play a song from Phantom of the Opera. Listen to this.
Hi everybody, I didn't think I'd ever get such a response to this little tryout. Here I am in my enforced cell phone isolation.
good news as it relates to the environment. According to the European Space Agency, air pollution, specifically nitrogen dioxide emissions, has dramatically decreased over Italy from February to March. All right, so some things are happening that are good for the world. If you'd like to share your silver lining, send me a tweet at Ali Velshi. We're going to try and feature it in our next segment. And before we go, let's get one last look at the markets as trading wraps up for the day and the week. Stocks tried to rally today, as you see at the beginning end, but failed to do so, closing out one of the most volatile weeks on Wall
I want to stop right there for a second, back up, because he really didn't emphasize on this that much.
Street. As in,
Let's back up.
some good news as it relates to the environment. According to the European pollution, to the and here's some good news as it relates to the environment. According to the European And here's some good news as it relates to the environment. According to the European Space Agency, air pollution, specifically nitrogen dioxide emissions, has dramatically decreased over Italy from February to March.
From February to March. Now, if you'll watch the way that the rest of the airlines is shutting down, if you'll give this thing about another month, you will see drastic measures in carbon dioxide diminishing, pertaining to trying to get the atmosphere, the outside atmosphere, back to normal again. Which once more verifies my assumption that the airplane industry is one of the reasons why we are seeing such abstract weather behavior patterns. That's just one of the reasons why. The other reason why is because of draining all the crude oil out of the ground. I don't know if it can be done towards engineering a plane. I'm sure it can. That is run by a nuclear vessel. And I realize as soon as you use the word nuclear, people automatically raise a red flag and say, oh my God, it's a bomb, it's a bomb. We have nuclear submarines that are flowing and have been flowing for years and years and years that never have to be filled up with any type of fuel, any type of gas, or any of the above. And if we know that the technology can work in submarines, making nuclear submarines that will never have to worry about being filled back up again, pertaining to using any type of fuel substance, we should be able to engineer an airplane that can do the same, that will eliminate all these carbons going up into the atmosphere. If we talk about battery-powered cars or hybrid-powered cars, I think the guy in California, Mr. Musk or whatever his name is, he's already engineered an 18-wheeler. I don't know how adequate that it may be, but we have already got designs towards making 18-wheelers that'll pull 80,000-pound loads down the road in a adequate form without having to stop and plug up or get filled back up. If we can do this, we can turn this problem, this global disaster that we have been on now for quite some time, we can turn it around if people set their minds to it. And of course they'll have to be retrained in how to program stuff, how to make stuff, how to invent stuff. But if we can do this, I truly believe that we can turn the world around to the point that we will not see weather catastrophes on the level that we're seeing right now. Just the other day, I think it was yesterday, it may have been last night. I don't know, I watch so much news, I can't keep up with all of it because I'm a news buff. But just the other day, I seen where it was extensive flooding somewhere. I don't forget now where. It was on the other side of the earth somewhere, where it literally just caused thousands and thousands of people to become homeless. And they said that this type of flood was based around environmental changes, global warming, the very thing that Al Gore preached on and started preaching on, give or take, about 30 years ago. Was whenever there was scientists that got to noticing, wow, we're really doing something to the earth, aren't we? Yeah. And I noticed this during 9/11, and so did many others. And you keep in mind, whenever 9/11 occurred, there was only flights being stopped from America to other places. The other flights still continued on. People were still engaging in going and coming and doing their thing. But if we could stop the whole airline industry down for a month, you would see areas that used to be all red or all yellow now clearing up, becoming normal again. So you can't tell me that these what do they call them? Something trails, environmental trails that these airlines are leaving. Every time one of them takes off, you can't tell me that this is not affecting our atmosphere. And our atmosphere is what affects our weather. Our atmosphere is above our stratosphere. And whenever you get to messing with that, then you're messing with Mother Nature on the same level as you would be if you cloned somebody because you was rich, and all of a sudden you needed a kidney or a liver or a heart, and you killed your clone just so that you could have a kidney, a liver, or a heart. We're messing with things here that we're not supposed to be messing with. And I'm not saying that some of these flights shouldn't be handled in the way that they're being handled right now, but the vast majority of them are pleasure flights. These are people going to and fro and from. These are people going and vacationing. They're sitting by the Bahamas. They're sitting around drinking and partying and getting high and laying around pools and staying in hotels and engulfed in boat trips and all the above. There has to be a logical reason why that this is clearing up now just within a month span. It's obvious. The airline industry is contaminating us, and it's destroying us, and it's destroying the planet. And as it's destroying the planet, it's destroying us. And now I think it has created an incubator for a major disease to break out that the world, the cortex of the world has yet to adjust to. And because it hasn't adjusted to it, now all of a sudden this disease breaks out that's basically going to kill a bunch of people. And it's frightening. It's frightening to see what man is doing to man pertaining to making all these disruptions in the ecosystem as well as the global environment. It's really sad. This will be a big eye-opener for the whole planet, especially NASA, in studying this, because they have already detected the difference between then versus now.
So some things are happening.
See what I'm saying?
happening that are good for the world. If you'd like to share your silver
But he didn't emphasize on it
linings,
because right now he's talking more on the coronavirus more so than he is the environmental warming. Why these commentators can't talk about both and put it all into a mix so people can understand it's beyond me. But like I said, if they can invent a submarine that can operate under nuclear power, you would think that they would be able to invent an airplane, if they hadn't already invented an airplane, that can do the same. That way it won't leave all these gases in the atmosphere that is basically killing the planet. Plus, it will be that much more less fuel that will be draining from the resources of the ground that is causing the water to warm up. One thing is adding to another thing. Another thing is adding to another thing. It's almost like a set of dominoes that's going off. And eventually, this planet is going to be unsustainable. It's going to be uninhabitable because of whenever we get rains, it's too much rain. Whenever it gets hot, it's too hot. We're going from one extreme to another as we're watching the icebergs melt on the poles. So you go figure what's happening. Mankind is destroying himself. And the Bible is very, very clear towards what is going to occur if mankind continues to do this. It says that God will come back and that he will destroy those who are destroying the earth. Just the other day, I'm going to leave on this note, and you can take it for what it's worth. But just the other day, I decided to be adventurous because back a few years ago, I had a real good weed eater that David and I had broke down and bought. It was actually more David's than it was mine. It was like a $300 weed eater that whenever I let a bunch of people come over here and stay, they wound up stealing the weed eater, along with a bunch of other stuff, along with all the guns that was on the property and everything else, or just about all the guns. Anyways, the other day, I went to Royal King for the first time. For the first time. You keep in mind, I'm soon to be 59 years old, and I've mowed a mini yard like many other people have that live out in the country settings. And I have weed eated many a time with a weed eater. I bought an electric weed eater. I bought an electric weed eater that come with an electric blower that you don't have to put gas in, mix gas, 2-part gas, crank it up, and weed eat. I felt like, well, I'm just going to give this thing a try. Believe it or not, this particular weed eater, yeah, I would like for this one to be a little stronger because I got a baby weed eater, but they've got some enormous electric power weed eaters that's got some humongous batteries in them. But believe it or not, this weed eater that I purchased works just as good, theoretically speaking, as a gas-driven weed eater. Now, granted, if I was doing commercialized work, let's say I was mowing cemeteries or something, and I was having to use big, heavy-duty stuff, I don't think the weed-eating industry yet has reached the point of climaxing to the point of being able to compete with some of your commercialized stuff. But I'm sure they're right on the cutting edge of being able to do so, to the point of instead of using a gas-powered weed eater, use a battery-powered weed eater. It saves gas, it's that much more less heat that is driven as far as artificial heat that you're creating out into the atmosphere. It's kind of like what that doctor told me a few weeks ago over there in Union City. I said, well, what if I was out here and I couldn't get back to some of my food supply that was designed for my diabetes pertaining to me dieting? What if I was out here and I had to stop at a restaurant and eat? And I had to order a hamburger. She said, well, is that the only thing that they had on the menu was hamburgers? Couldn't you have got a piece of chicken? Couldn't you have got Couldn't you have gotten a salad? I go, well, some places maybe not. I go, what if they didn't have a chicken? What if they didn't have salad? She goes, well, can't you always eat the hamburger without eating the bun? So there's always areas that we can confine, reform, modify, tweak, get a little better for the rest of us, for the world, for the planet. Just like the airline industry that is steadily growing, but it's also steadily becoming a problem to the planet. Please, I want to thank you for allowing for us to be a part of your lives in the Windmill Ministries. And good luck to each and every one of us as we endeavor into the future. Thank you, and shalom.
Send me a tweet at Ali Velshi. We're going to try and feature it in our next segment. And before we go, let's get one last look at the markets as trading wraps up for the day and the week. Stocks tried to rally today, as you see at the beginning end, but failed to do so, closing out one of the most volatile weeks on Wall Street as investors contend with growing fears over the coronavirus's economic blow. The Dow is down 900 points. We are closing near session lows. We're 4.5 points lower. As for the other markets, the other major markets are all lower as well for the day. I do want to show you, though, that, when we go back to markets, I might just have that. If we just quickly put up markets over the long term that we've got, I think I've got a picture of the Dow over a few decades. These recessions do hurt. These downturns do hurt. You can see a big one in 1958, a big one in 1980, obviously a very big one you remember in 2008. But they do always come back. This one may be long and it may be deep, but it's going to come back. That wraps up the hour for me. I'm going to see you right back here tonight at 10 p.m. Eastern for the last word.
Yeah, and you know how it comes back? It comes back on the back of the workers. That's how it comes back. People that thought that they had a good retirement, that was fixing to retire, now don't have nothing left in their 401k. How can they wait it out at the age of 62 or 65 or 67? How are those people that was going to retire in the next 90 days or 30 days or even 6 months to a year? Because you know good and well it ain't going to come back in 6 months to a year. They say it's going to come back. Oh yeah, it'll come back. It may take it 5 years from now. May take it 7 years or 10 years. In the meantime, all these people that had their hopes that they was going to be able to retire and possibly buy an RV. Honey, let's go travel the countryside. Let's go traveling. We'll spend a little time over here and spend a little time over there. Now all those people's hopes and dreams are over with. Because guess what? Time does not stop pertaining to age. And as you get older, you can't reverse the clock. And a lot of us can't work another year, 2 years, or even 3 years to advance our Social Security, our retirement, by giving this 401k scam. And that's exactly what it is. It's a scam, because we have seen it do it again and again and again. Let's back up. Let's look at the chart one more time. Right here. All right. What did he say? What did he say? In 1949, it took a hit. It took a hit. Boom. 1953, it took a hit. Boom. 1958, took another hit. Boom. 1960 was almost as bad as the 1949 hit, but not quite. It lacked just a few points. Not quite as bad. It jerked down again right there, along about 69, but then it took another hit in 70, another hit in 75, a real big hit in 1980. Look at that hit. That hit's right up there beyond the 1953 hit. That hit is almost comparison to the 1958 hit and the 1980 hit. Then in 82, then in 90, then in 201, and then right here. Well, he hadn't got the chart over here, or if he does, let me look and see if I can. towards what it's already failed this time. No. He don't have nothing there. Nope. He don't have the chart. I bet the hit now, I'm not looking at it. I mean, I don't know. But for some reason, it's got this line right here. And that's its, I guess you'd call that its core or its mid-range. Towards it, bing, 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 bang, bing, bing, a bang, bing, a bang, bing, a bang, 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 bing, back and forth, up and down. But the bottom line is, once it goes way, way up, like it did right here, or like it did over here, it went way, way up. But then here comes all the investors sweeping the cream off the top, and ultimately, who's the one that pays for it? It's this bunch between this line and this line. This is where you're at. This is where they want you to be at. They don't want you to get overboard. They don't want you to really get underboard. So they try to stay within this time frame right here. And see, it used to be over here. They've gotten greedy from basically around 1990. It used to be the timeline was from here to here. It was a wider spread. See what I'm saying? It was a wider spread. Now it's gotten tighter. Ding, 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 ding. And that's where they want you to be. They want you to be in here. They want you to get your hopes way up, like it was, but then all of a sudden, boom, bam. Every time. And if it ain't because of they project some sort of a war, or who's in between that right there? You got the Vietnam War, part of the Korean War, the Vietnam War, Desert Storm War, Desert Shield War, and the current war that we've been involved in for 17, 18 years. If people can't see how the 1%ers is playing with the 99%ers in this regard, they're either blind or they don't have enough intelligence to see the trees for the forest. This isn't the first rodeo, folks. I continue to tell my viewers that. It's a ripoff. It's a scandal. You got people in those markets that are waiting for some sort of hidden sign, some sort of hidden bell that goes off whenever they make a run for the banks, and they basically ravage it down to its basic core. And once it gets down to that basic core, which is probably give or take about 18, maybe a little lower than 18, that's whenever they start lightening up, and they're not hitting it quite as hard. But now whenever you have something on this level that's happening on a world level, it's going to be run all the way down to the circuit. It's going to basically bust the bank. And that's what I'm afraid that's going to happen here eventually, pertaining to this worldwide pandemic, something that has been thrown upon to society. And of course, whenever that happens, our national debt will collapse, our currency will collapse, and all currencies will collapse. And that's whenever they'll reinvent a new system, and the new system that they'll reinvent will be a cashless society pertaining to putting chips in everybody. We'll go to a chip system to where they won't have American dollars, they won't have Spanish pesos, they won't have the euros, they won't have the francs, they won't have the Russian money, they won't have all these other different types of currencies, it'll all be renovated over into the New World Order. And that's where this is all heading. I truly believe that. And it's one thing to talk about it in the form of a philosophy. It's one thing to talk about it in the form of mythology. It's one thing to talk about it as far as ideology. But I'm telling you right now, there was a reason why that it's in the scriptures where it says that they will take their silver and gold and throw it into the streets, because basically their cash and the things that they used to consider valuable are no longer going to be valuable any longer, but something's going to have to replace that value. Something's going to have to replace that bartering system to where you're exchanging 10 chickens for one goat. And that new system that I'm talking about will in fact be the digital system that will soon come into play, which hopefully will be a much, much fairer system in regards towards people not being able to abuse the system to the point that the governments will get their fair share of money in running the governments, and at the same time it will leave an even opportunity for not just the 1%, but for the 99%ers, for everybody to get ahead, for everybody to start all over pertaining to the year of the Jubilee. You keep in mind we're already over $23 trillion in debt just here in America alone. It has been estimated for quite some times that somewhere between 22 and 25 trillion dollars will no longer be able to maintain our interest level, in which we're not paying a dime right now on the principal level. But after we exceed that point to where we can't maintain the interest, then we're not just theoretically broke, but we will be legally broke. We will be not just technically broke, but morally and legally broke. And that's where all this is heading. And the people that's going to come out on top pertaining to this re-exchange of the 1929 collapse will be the people that's already got their hand or their signature on property values, regardless whether it be boats, hotels, farms, factories. Those will be the people that will come out on top. Because even as it is right now, if they was to stop everything and put it back to its slow pace, you got farmers that couldn't pay their tax exemptions for last year because they didn't make enough money because they got flooded up and down the Mississippi, or they was involved in orchards out west that got burnt down to the ground. You got thousands of people that filed bankruptcy this past last year simply because they couldn't pay their taxes. Why do you think that's going to be like this year pertaining to this coronavirus and pertaining to shutting down factories and shutting down corporations and basically shutting down whole industries? What do you think it's going to be like this year? It's going to be bad. That's what it's going to be like. Good luck to all of us. And shalom.